I'm here again with Philip Shepard. This is Dr. Susan Berger. We're talking about Embracing the Deep Mystery of Wholeness, a workshop, an experiential, amazing workshop on June 25th and 26th in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Philip is one of our main speakers. We've got a total of 5 speakers. We're going to be adding things between now and then too. Probably have some surprises that aren't yet on the schedule. Philip, if you would, the people that are going to be coming to the workshop, could you tell us a little bit about what you're going to share that day and what they can expect to experience in being with us that weekend?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. There's a part of the presentation that's a talk. The reason I feel the talk is important is because we're governed in our culture by assumptions that we feel their presence, but we don't know how to get past them. And so the talk is like a kind of unwrapping of messaging in our culture that keeps us in our heads, keeps us disconnected, and insists that the world is made of bits and pieces that stand alone and are somewhat disconnected. So it's I have so much fun giving the talk because it's asking questions where people aren't used to questions being asked, and then it sort of opens possibilities, and that's really what I'm most interested in, is opening possibilities, creating choices for people where there haven't been choices before.
Could you give us just an example or two of what you mean?
Yeah, we're told we have 5 senses, and we all know what our senses are, and that's arbitrary. I mean, it's really arbitrary until you go to another culture, and then you see, like there's the Ango-Iwi tribe in Africa, and this wonderful anthropologist who wrote a book, Culture and the Senses, went there and studied with them, and their primary sense is a sense of balance. And you say, well, that's kind of curious, because we talk about a sense of balance. There's a sense organ devoted to balance, but we don't recognize it. And then you question, why is that? What is it about the senses we accept and those that we don't? And you realize every sense that we find acceptable involves a stimulus traveling across the boundary of the self, whether the boundary is the ear or the eye or the nose, and registering on the nervous system. So our senses reinforce our sense of being independent of the world. And the world or stimuli therefrom cross the boundary of the self. So balance is so unlike that. Balance is a felt relationship between your center of gravity and that of the earth. It's something that is felt in the body, and that's not our cultural paradigm. Says the self needs a boundary, it is inviolate, and we need to reinforce that in every way we can. That's only one example. There's senses like the Ango-Iwi consider language a sense. And we're like, and the anthropologist herself, it's so interesting because she said, oh no, in writing about it, as they suggested, language is a sense. She said, oh, no, I haven't really described what I mean by a sense. So she'd bend over backwards and describe all over again what she means by a sense. And they'd nod and they say, oh yes, language is a sense. Let me explain it again. And it took her a long time, but to me, it's so clear. Again, we need to reinforce that we are separate. We need to have this boundary. So we believe, and it's so mistaken, we believe that language, that when I'm speaking, I'm taking a thought that I have, delivering it across the boundary of myself to you so that you can understand it. That's not what language does. As I'm speaking, my thoughts are being clarified by the act of speaking. When I begin a sentence, I don't know what the last word of the sentence is going to be. I can sense where I'm going. It's like this thing in the dark, and language helps me feel my way towards it. In the same way that you're in a dark room and the sense of touch enables you to find your way through the dark room. Language is a sense. But again, it's just one way in which our culture contracts the self and puts a boundary around it. And then, we just by being told you have five senses and feeling them all as this, the self, the passive self, and the world crosses the boundary to register on the nervous system, that affects how you experience the self. So that's one example, in the way of bringing questions to bear, where you're just, people aren't used to having the senses questioned. Right. We're told what they are, and it seems so scientific and unassailable in a way.
So we limit ourselves dramatically. I think one simple example that I even realized as a kid is a dog whistle. Like, because it's people will say, if I can't taste it, feel it, smell it, hear it, see it, it doesn't exist. Yeah. Well, that dog's hearing something that you're not hearing. So it's so limiting in this box we've placed ourselves in.
Yes.
And when
it's not even one little adjustment I'd make. It's not a box we've placed ourselves in. It's the box in which we've been born and raised. It's the only box we know. And so people, I watch people saying, what's wrong with me? I feel so disconnected. Nothing's wrong with you. You were born into this paradigm that tells you to disconnect, that tells you you're separate. So that's the crux of it. It's not something we've done to ourselves. It's something we've grown up inside. And that's the most difficult thing in the world to question.
Yes. And that's what my goal is for this weekend workshop, is to start to chip away at that. Right. And again, get back to and literally undoing a lifetime of teaching. A lifetime of limitation. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's why, the first part of the workshop is setting the context, and it's really helpful, but that quality of undoing can only be experiential. And so that's why in the workshop, the 3/4 of the workshop is just in these exercises. I mean, I call them exercises or I call them practices, but they're so simple. They as you know, they bring you to a level of simple subtlety, and at that level, you begin to notice the substructure of your patterns. If you don't notice that substructure, you don't have any choice. Right? It'll just keep going the way it is. You'll be caught in that pattern. So just noticing the pattern already begins to change it. And that's what's exciting for me. That's where you gain new choice and new possibility.
What was fascinating to me is those of us who have taken some training with you and done some of these exercises, is when we come back afterwards and discuss what we felt, what we experienced. There was some admission, as I know you know, that, well, that seemed kind of weird. What you were asking us to do seemed too simple or sort of silly. But every one of us, always, every time, experienced something. It might have been something new, something deeper, something new that we hadn't felt before. And each of us, we're very different maybe in how we experienced it, which was, again, the beauty of it. There's no right or wrong. It's just feeling into that part of us that we've been missing, longing for but missing to feel and connect with.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's that issue that plagues us, that issue of alienation and disconnection and not feeling real, and life feeling meaningless. All of that is sort of an inevitable consequence of the contraction of the self to within this tacit boundary that we're raised with. And that, you've seen it as people soften through that boundary. They come to life. It's like a little like
Right.
watching a
Right.
flower bud just blossom, and it's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what we need. So
Yeah, I
thank
feel
you.
that. I feel that feels like my life's work, really, to bring clarity to this and to help people. We're so stuck in our heads, and we're married to that idea that we can outthink our problems, we can
Mm-hmm.
outthink, out strategize, outmaneuver, and we go round and round and round, haunted by some, this promise that will never be fulfilled, because that's not where integration happens. Integration happens in the body.
And this is so timely, I think, because we're at a point that we've got such high level of technology, such a high level of knowledge, that if we're not learning, if we don't shift and start to use it within an attitude of integrity and wholeness, we're going to think ourselves into oblivion, basically. We're going that direction if we don't live differently with each other, with the earth, with everything within this intelligent universe. That universe is going to do without us, and we'll do better without us. I don't know if that's a silly thing to say, but it's that important, I think.
It is that important. It's like, for me, it's like the distinction between cleverness and intelligence. We're so very clever, and we've forgotten how to live intelligently. In
Right.
part because as we've contracted the self, we've contracted our very idea of what our own intelligence is. We think it's the ability to reason in an abstract fashion. That's what an IQ test primarily discloses.
Yeah.
And intelligence is this huge spectrum of sensitivity. And I don't care if it's a sensitivity to a child's tears, or to color, or to arithmetic relationship, or to weather pattern. Any sensitivity is a form of intelligence. And then the question is how to ground that. But as soon as you understand your intelligence as grounded sensitivity, it alters your relationship. You come into felt relationship with the world, and then you begin to harmonize with it, which is such a very different proposition from trying to control it.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about the murmurations of starlings, where you see these just thousands of birds just all flowing, and they're not running into each other. For anybody listening that can find that on YouTube, look up murmurations of starlings. Where I was at a beautiful the aquarium in Toronto, actually, just when we were finishing our training last week, and the fish and the schools of fish, as they just flow with each other, and and feeling like as human beings we're disconnected with that. Yeah. We don't flow with each other. We're not sensitive, first of all, to ourselves, let alone the people around us. We're forcing things. We're thinking about things, and not just the felt self, feeling into that, what nature does naturally, which we're a part of. We've just lost that connection, and it's just awesome to see, and it's like, I want to be like them.
Yeah. And the difference, the primary difference, is that because we've contracted within the head, we've contracted the sense of self, we're so busy guiding ourselves. That's our primary task. So we're in a state of self-consciousness where we watch ourselves and comment and judge and guide ourselves. And we need guidance, but because we're in that contracted state, we have blinded ourselves to the guidance that is there in the present, the guidance that moves those flocks of starlings, that moves each fish in a school. The guidance is flawless because it is real.
Mm-hmm.
And to find that quality in your own life, to feel the guidance of the world around you in that way, is to open to the possibility of a grace in your life that is felt not as an accomplishment, but as a gift.
Mm. Beautiful. And then life feels very different from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I
We're
love
going
it.
to have fun.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of fun and be around other folks who I don't know, they're like-minded people. That it's nice to be around folks that are coming together, more and more networks of people that are paying attention,
Yeah.
paying attention now to exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you there.
You bet, Susan.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.